The knock came just after sundown. Not loud, not urgent. 3 slow taps, the kind meant for someone who was already listening. Caleb Rourke sat alone at the small kitchen table, the oil lamp burning low, its flame bending every time the wind pressed against the walls of the ranch house. Outside, the hills were going dark, one by one, the way they always did, like something sinking beneath the earth. Nobody knocked on that door, not the front, not the side, and never the back. Caleb didn't move. He kept his eyes on the cracked wood of the table, counting the grooves his knife had carved there over the years. He told himself it was the wind, or an animal, or memory playing tricks on a man who hadn't slept right in more than a decade. Then it came again. 3 taps. Closer this time. And then a voice. "Please, don't open that door." It was a woman's voice. Low, steady, not afraid. That was what frightened him. Caleb's hand tightened around the mug. He knew that voice, or at least he knew the shape of it, the way it settled in the air, the way it carried weight without raising itself. He stood slowly, chair legs scraping against the floor. The back door stood at the far end of the house. Plain, unmarked, locked. For 12 years. His wife had stood right there the last night he saw her alive, one hand pressed flat against the wood, the other shaking as she begged him not to come closer. "You promised," she had said. "Whatever you hear, you promised you wouldn't look." Caleb reached the door and stopped. The air around it felt wrong, cooler, still. On the other side, the woman spoke again, closer now, like she had leaned in until her mouth was almost against the wood. "If you open it," she said softly, "you don't get to close it again." Caleb rested his palm against the door. It felt warm. "If you're still here with me, stay close, and before this goes any further, subscribe and like this video, because once Caleb turns that key, the ranch will never be the same again." His fingers curled around the lock, and somewhere deep beneath the house, something shifted. Caleb Rourke did not turn the key. Not yet. He stood there longer than he meant to, palm pressed against the wood, feeling the faint vibration beneath it, like a slow breath traveling through the walls. The house had always made sounds, old houses did, but this was different. This sound waited. Caleb stepped back. The voice on the other side didn't follow him. It didn't beg, didn't knock again. That, more than anything, told him it would still be there when he returned. He went back to the table and sat down hard, the chair creaking beneath his weight. His hands shook as he poured himself another cup of coffee, even though it had gone cold hours ago. 12 years. That was how long the back door had stayed locked. Long enough for the paint to peel, long enough for the hinges to rust, long enough for the ranch itself to start feeling like a thing that remembered more than he did. The Rourke Ranch sat on land nobody wanted anymore, not since the droughts, not since the cattle started spooking for no reason, bolting at shadows that weren't there. Neighbors said the hills were wrong, that the ground shifted at night, that you could hear voices carry when there was no wind. Caleb never argued. Men who worked the land learned early, arguing didn't change the truth. Silence lasted longer. That night, the night everything closed in on itself, came back to him without asking. Eliza had been standing in the hallway, barefoot, her hair loose around her shoulders. She hadn't been screaming at first. She'd been calm, too calm. "There's something in that room," she'd said. Caleb remembered laughing, a short sound, nervous. "There's nothing in this house I haven't built myself," he'd told her. Eliza shook her head. "Not everything that lives here belongs to us." The argument stretched until voices cracked, until the wind howled so hard the windows rattled, and then Eliza had gone into the back room alone. The lock had clicked from the inside. He never heard her scream, only the knock. 3 taps, just like tonight. Caleb pushed himself up and crossed the room again, slower this time. His boots sounded too loud on the floorboards. Each step felt like he was moving deeper into something he'd spent 12 years avoiding. He stopped a few feet from the door. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice rough. There was a pause. Then the woman answered, "You know who I am." The certainty in her voice made his chest tighten. "No," Caleb said, "I don't." Another pause, longer this time. "My name is Sarah Bell, and I used to sleep in the room you locked." Caleb swallowed. That name wasn't a ghost. It was worse. Sarah Bell had worked the ranch years ago, hired help, quiet, strong. She'd stayed longer than most women did out here, long enough to learn the land, long enough to start asking questions. She disappeared one winter morning. People said she ran off. Caleb had let them. His eyes drifted to the floorboards near the door. A faint line ran through the wood, a seam, as if something beneath the house had shifted and never quite settled back into place. "Sarah's dead, Head." "No," the woman replied gently. "I just stopped leaving." The lantern flickered, and for the first time since the knocking began, Caleb felt something colder than fear. He felt recognition. Caleb didn't answer right away. He stood there staring at the seam in the floor, the way the boards bowed inward just enough to suggest weight beneath them. He remembered fixing that spot years ago, hammering it flat, telling himself the ground had shifted from the rain. There hadn't been rain. "You shouldn't use that name," he said finally. On the other side of the door, Sarah Bell let out a breath that sounded almost like a laugh. "You always did hate when the past remembered you back." Caleb's jaw tightened. Sarah had come to the ranch young, younger than Eliza. Hard-eyed, quiet, with hands already rough from work. She never flirted, never complained. She watched everything. That had been her mistake. Eliza noticed it too. At first, she'd liked Sarah, another woman in a place that swallowed women whole. They cooked together, talked late at night when the wind rattled the walls. Caleb used to hear their voices drift down the hallway, low and careful, like secrets being passed hand to hand. Then the questions started, not loud ones, careful ones. Why does the ground feel warm here? Why do the cattle refuse that hill? Why do you keep the back room locked, Caleb? He'd brushed it off. Land did strange things. Old houses settled. Fear made stories out of dirt and shadow. Sarah didn't buy it. She started sleeping closer to the back of the house, said she felt calmer there, said the ranch felt quieter when she listened instead of fought it. Eliza had stopped sleeping at all. Caleb remembered the night Sarah vanished, how the house had gone still afterward, too still, like something satisfied. Now her voice waited on the other side of the door. "You left my boots by the fence," Sarah said softly. "You told people I ran." Caleb closed his eyes. "I told them what they wanted to hear." "That's always been your gift," she replied. "You make absence sound like a choice." The lantern flickered again. Caleb opened his eyes just as another sound joined the room, not from the door, from the walls. A slow creak, followed by something that sounded like a woman humming, low, almost comforting. His blood ran cold. "Eliza?" he whispered. The humming stopped. Sarah spoke immediately, her voice sharper now. "Don't say her name unless you mean to finish this." Caleb's hand dropped to his side. "You're not her," he said. "No," Sarah agreed. "She was kinder." Silence stretched between them. Then Sarah added, quieter, "She tried to leave." Caleb felt the room tilt. Eliza had never said that. She locked herself in that room because she thought if she stayed long enough, the ranch would let the rest of us go. She thought sacrifice was enough. A pause. It was not. Caleb stepped back from the door like it had burned him. The humming started again. Closer. Lower. Coming from beneath the floor now. Caleb understood something then, something he had avoided naming for 12 years. The ranch didn't trap people. It convinced them to stay. And women heard it first. If this story is pulling you in, stay with it. And right here, subscribe and like this video, because what Caleb does next will decide who the ranch keeps and who it finally lets go. The lock on the back door clicked. Not from his side, from inside. Caleb's hand never touched the key. The lock turned anyway, slow, careful, like it didn't want to startle him. The sound echoed through the house, sharper than a gunshot in the quiet. Caleb stepped back, his heel catching on the edge of the rug. The lantern flame jumped, throwing shadows that bent the walls inward, as if the room itself leaned closer to watch. The door opened no more than an inch, enough for a sliver of darkness to breathe out. The air that slipped through wasn't cold, it was warm, alive. Caleb smelled earth, damp wood, something sweet underneath, almost like wildflowers left too long in the sun. "Don't," Sarah said from the other side, her voice suddenly strained. "Not yet." Caleb stared at the gap. "I didn't," she cut in. "I know. That's how it works." From inside the room, a third voice spoke, soft, female, older than Sarah, calmer than Elijah had ever been. "Caleb Rourke," it said. "You're standing in the doorway like a man who still thinks he has a choice." His breath caught. That voice did not belong to memory. "Who are you?" he asked. A pause, then footsteps, slow ones, not toward the door, but circling inside the room, just out of sight. "My name doesn't matter anymore," the woman replied, "but once I was called Margaret Hale." Caleb's knees nearly gave out. That name sat deep in the bones of this land. Margaret Hale owned the ranch before the Rourkes, a widow, no children. Folks said she'd gone mad and burned her own journals before vanishing into the hills. The ranch had been sold cheap after that. Too cheap. "You're dead," Caleb said. Margaret laughed softly. "So are most things that stay," she answered. The door creaked wider. Just enough now for Caleb to see the edge of the room beyond. Bare walls, no furniture, and the floor. The floor was wrong. It dipped inward like a shallow bowl, as if something beneath it had pressed up for years, waiting. Sarah's voice dropped to a whisper. She was the first one who listened all the way. Margaret stopped moving. "You make that sound like a kindness," she said. "It was a warning," Sarah replied. Caleb pressed his back against the opposite wall, chest tight, mind racing. 3 women, 3 voices, all tied to this house, this land. All of them had stayed. "You said Eliza tried to leave," Caleb said hoarsely. "You said she failed." Margaret answered him. "She didn't fail, she delayed." The humming returned, stronger now, layered. Not one voice, but many, woven together like a hymn sung underground. The house shuddered. Dust fell from the rafters. Caleb felt it then, clear and undeniable. The ranch was not angry, it was patient, and it believed, truly believed, that Caleb had finally understood his role. Sarah's voice softened. "This is the part where it lies to you. It will tell you the suffering can end." Margaret stepped closer to the door. The gap widened another inch. "And it will be right," she added, "for you." Caleb's gaze dropped to the floor again. The seam had opened, just slightly. Something beneath the house shifted,
and settled. For the first time since the knocking began, Caleb understood the lie he had been living with. The door had never been locked to keep something in. It had been locked to keep him out.
The humming faded, not gone, just lowered, like a crowd holding its breath. Caleb pushed himself off the wall and stood straighter than he felt. His legs ached, his chest tight, but his mind was painfully clear. That scared him more than the voices. "Tell me how it ends," he said. Sarah didn't answer. Margaret did. "It ends the way it always does," she said calmly, "with quiet." The door eased open another inch, enough now for lantern light to spill into the room beyond. The walls absorbed it instead of reflecting it, like the space itself didn't care for light one way or another. Caleb stepped closer despite himself. "I've buried enough," he said. "I'm not staying." Sarah's voice sharpened. "That's what it wants you to think," she said, "that leaving is still possible." Margaret chuckled. "You say that like it's a trap." "It is," Sarah replied, "just not the way you think." Caleb looked between the narrow crack of the door and the floor beneath his boots. "Explain," he said. For a moment no one spoke. Then Sarah did something unexpected. She sighed. Tired, human. "The ranch doesn't need bodies," she said. "It needs anchors." Caleb frowned. "It binds itself to people who carry guilt, people who won't run when things go wrong, people who already believe they deserve to stay." Caleb swallowed. Margaret's voice softened, almost gentle. "You fit beautifully," she said. The lantern flickered again, and this time Caleb noticed something new. Reflections, not in glass, but in the shadows on the wall. Women, standing shoulder to shoulder, their outlines faint but distinct. Some young, some old, some with hair braided tight, others loose around their faces, all of them facing the door, facing him. Eliza's shape stood among them, her head bowed. "You told me the truth once," Caleb whispered, his voice breaking. "You said the land was wrong." Eliza lifted her head. Her face was calm. "It isn't wrong," she said. "It's honest." The room felt smaller now, not closing in, listening. Sarah stepped closer to the door, her voice dropping. "It will let you leave," she said, "if you give it something better." Caleb looked at her. "What?" Sarah met her eyes through the crack in the door. "Someone who still believes she can go." Caleb's breath caught. I mean me," Sarah said quietly. Margaret didn't object. Eliza didn't move. The shadows waited. The ranch made its offer clear. Caleb could walk away. He could finally leave the land, the house, the guilt. All it asked in return was one woman who still remembered what freedom felt like. The lie was almost perfect, because for the first time since the knocking began, leaving sounded like mercy. Caleb nodded. Just once. It was a small motion, almost invisible, but the house felt it. The floor creaked, not in protest, but in approval. Sarah's eyes widened. "No," she said. "Caleb, listen to me. That's not—" "I know what I'm doing," he cut in, his voice hoarse. "I've known for a long time." That was the truth that hurt the most. He had known the night Sarah disappeared, known when Eliza locked herself in that room, known every morning he woke up still breathing while others stayed behind. Margaret smiled, a slow, satisfied thing. "You see," she said, "it doesn't take force, it never has." The door opened wider, not all the way, just enough. Sarah stepped back instinctively, her heel brushing the warped edge of the floor. The shadows along the walls leaned forward, stretching, thinning, like hands reaching through cloth. "This won't end it," Sarah said urgently. "It will only reset it." Caleb didn't look at her. "I know what I'm doing," he cut in, his voice hoarse. "I've known for a long time. I don't get to leave clean. I never have." He stepped aside. The room seemed to exhale. Sarah stared at him, searching his face for doubt, for hesitation, for the man she thought might still choose differently. She didn't find him. "You always mistook endurance for virtue," she said quietly. Then she turned toward the door. The moment her foot crossed the threshold, the house shifted. Not violently, purposefully. The humming surged, layered and deep, vibrating through the bones of the ranch. The shadows pulled away from the walls and gathered near the floor, folding inward, spiraling down into the dip at the center of the room. Sarah cried out, not in pain, but in realization. "Oh," she breathed, "that's what it wants." The floor gave way, not collapsing, opening. Sarah dropped from sight in a rush of air and sound, like a well swallowing a stone. The door slammed shut on its own, hard enough to rattle the walls. Silence followed, heavy, complete. Caleb stood alone in the hallway, chest heaving, ears ringing. For a moment, just a moment, he felt lighter. The pressure eased, the house stilled, the land outside seemed to settle. Margaret's voice drifted through the door, calmer now. "It worked. You're free." Caleb leaned his forehead against the wood. He waited for relief. It didn't come. Instead, he noticed something else. The seam in the floor was still there, wider now, and beneath it, another sound, fainter, a woman humming. New. Caleb's knees buckled. That was when he understood the second lie. The ranch hadn't accepted Sarah as payment, it had accepted her as addition, and the role it had been preparing all along wasn't hers, it was his. Caleb didn't sleep. He sat at the kitchen table until dawn, staring at the back door like it might open again on its own. The house stayed quiet, no humming, no knocks, just the low, ordinary sounds of wood settling as the night let go of the land. For the first time in years, the ranch felt calm. That should have been the relief. Instead, it felt like a warning delivered too gently to argue with. When the sky finally lightened, Caleb stood, pulled on his coat, and packed only what he could carry. No keepsakes, no photographs. He left Eliza's things where they were. He didn't look at the hallway. He stepped outside and saddled his horse with shaking hands. The land watched. He could feel it in the way the air pressed close, in the way the hills seemed nearer than they had any right to be. Still, he mounted up and rode. At first, nothing stopped him. The fence line passed, the old oak, the dry creek bed. Caleb's chest loosened with every mile. Then the path curved. He frowned. This road didn't bend here. He urged the horse on. Minutes later, the ranch house came into view. Same angle, same shadows, same back door, unseen but felt. Caleb pulled hard on the reins, heart pounding. "No," he whispered. He turned east, rode faster. The sun climbed higher, and still after every turn, every desperate correction, the ranch waited for him at the end of the road, patient as ever. By midday, his horse refused to move. Caleb slid down into the dirt, breath ragged. "You said I was free," he said aloud, not caring who heard. The wind stirred. From behind him, Margaret's voice carried easy and sure. "You are." Caleb turned slowly. She stood a few paces away, solid now, not a shadow, not a voice, a woman shaped by time and purpose, her dress plain, her eyes sharp. "Then why can't I leave?" he demanded. Margaret tilted her head. "Because leaving was never the freedom you wanted. You wanted absolution." Caleb laughed bitterly. "I gave you what you asked for." "No," she corrected. "You gave what you could spare." She gestured toward the ranch. "Sarah believed in escape. Eliza believed in sacrifice. You believe in endurance." Her gaze hardened. "And endurance makes the strongest roots." The ground beneath Caleb's boots felt warmer now, alive. He backed away. "You're lying." Margaret didn't follow. She didn't need to. "The ranch doesn't trap, it reflects. It gives shape to what you already are." Caleb felt it then, not in the earth,
but in himself, a pull, subtle, familiar. The same pull that had kept him here through drought, through grief, through years of silence he called strength. The ranch didn't need to chase him. He always came back. Margaret's voice softened. "There's one thing left to do." Caleb looked toward the house. The back door stood closed, waiting.
Caleb walked back to the house, not because the land pulled him, not because the road bent, but because his feet already knew the way. The front door opened without resistance. The hinges didn't creak. The house felt prepared, like a place that had been holding its breath and finally decided to exhale. Inside, everything was exactly where he'd left it. The table, the lamp, the hallway, and at the far end, the back door. It wasn't locked anymore. Caleb stood in the middle of the room for a long time, listening. The humming had changed. It wasn't layered now. It was singular. One voice, familiar. "Caleb," he said. The name didn't echo. It answered. She stood in the doorway of the back room, whole and solid, as if the years had only passed around her. Her hair was tied back the way it used to be when she worked. Her hands were clean, steady. "You came back," she said. Caleb nodded once. "I tried to leave." Eliza smiled faintly. "I know." He took a step toward her, then another. "I didn't know how to save you. I didn't know how to save any of you." Eliza's eyes softened, but there was no forgiveness in them, only understanding. "You never wanted to be saved," she said gently. "You wanted permission to stay." Caleb stopped. "That's not true." Eliza tilted her head, studying him the way she had when they were young, when she could still see through him faster than he could lie. "You stayed after Sarah," she said. "You stayed after me." Her gaze dropped to the floor beneath them. "You stayed because something here matched you." The room felt warmer now, the walls closer. The house wasn't closing in, it was settling around him, fitting. "I tried to protect you," Caleb whispered. "I know," Eliza replied, "but protection and possession wear the same face when you're afraid to lose." Caleb's breath caught. Outside, the wind rose, carrying the low murmur of voices beneath it, not urgent, not angry, waiting. Eliza stepped aside. The back room lay open behind her. The floor dipped deeper than before. The seam had widened into a gentle curve, like the earth itself making space. "You don't have to go any farther," she said. "You just have to stop pretending you're leaving." Caleb felt it then, not fear, relief. The kind that comes when a man finally admits the truth he's been living beside his whole life. He stepped forward. The room accepted him without sound. The humming steadied, balanced. Eliza reached for his hand. "You already know," she began. The world outside the ranch noticed the change before Caleb did. It came as small things at first. Cattle stopped wandering. The wind no longer howled through the hills at night. Travelers who passed nearby said the air felt heavier, but calmer, like a storm that had already decided where it would break. Inside the house, time softened. Days moved without edges. Morning light filtered in through the windows, pale and even, never too bright, never fully dim. Caleb woke at the same table he'd sat at for years, his hands steady now, his chest no longer tight with the effort of holding something back. Eliza was there when he woke, always. She didn't speak much, neither did he. They moved around each other the way people do after long familiarity has burned through the need for words. She cooked, he fixed what didn't need fixing. The house listened. Caleb stopped dreaming. Or maybe the dreams simply folded themselves into waking life. Sometimes he thought he heard Sarah's voice beneath the floor, faint, distant, like a memory repeating itself until it lost meaning. He never went looking for it. He understood now what searching did. Margaret appeared less often. When she did, it was never as a threat, more like a witness. "You're settling in," she said once, standing by the window as the sun dipped behind the hills. Caleb nodded. That's what the land wanted, someone who would stay awake inside it. Caleb frowned. Awake? Margaret smiled. It grows restless when no one remembers what it costs. That night, a rider came down the road. A young woman, alone, dust on her boots, fear she hadn't learned to hide yet. Caleb saw her from the porch. He didn't move. The woman stopped at the gate, looking up at the house the way people did when they felt something before they understood it. She hesitated. Then she called out, "Sir, I was told there was work here." Caleb felt the house respond. Not eager, expectant. Eliza stepped beside him, her hand brushing his arm. "This is where it begins again," she said softly. Caleb watched the woman waiting by the fence. Young, hopeful, carrying the kind of guilt that hadn't hardened yet. "No," he said quietly. Eliza looked at him. "You don't get to decide that part," she replied. "Only how honest it will be." The woman waited. Caleb stepped off the porch and walked toward the gate, his boots heavy in the dirt. The land warmed beneath his feet, recognizing the role he had finally accepted. He stopped a few paces from her. "There's work, but it isn't the kind that lets you leave unchanged." The woman swallowed. "I've stayed worse places," she said. Caleb nodded. He believed her. Behind him, the house settled deeper into the earth. The quiet held. Years later, people would argue about when the ranch became what it was. Some said it happened the night the woman arrived at the gate. Others claimed it was much earlier, when Caleb Mercer stopped running from the house and let it finish what it had started. The truth sat somewhere quieter. The ranch never hunted, never called out. It waited. People came because they were already cracked, already carrying something unfinished inside them. The land didn't create guilt, it recognized it. Caleb understood that now. He aged slower than he should have. His hair grayed, but his back stayed straight. His eyes held weight, not madness. Folks who met him described the same feeling afterward, like they'd spoken to someone who knew exactly what they were hiding and chose not to say it out loud. Some stayed, some left after a night, shaken and silent. A few tried to dig. They never found anything. The ground stayed clean. Eliza remained, not trapped, not summoned, present. She and Caleb shared meals, seasons, years. Their silence grew comfortable, then meaningful. Whatever they were no longer needed a name. Margaret was gone, or perhaps finished. On certain evenings, when the sun bled low across the fields, Caleb felt the land breathe, slow, deep, satisfied, not hungry anymore, just aware. One night, a boy asked him something Caleb had once asked himself. "Is this place cursed?" Caleb looked across the land, the fences holding, the house standing firm, the soil calm beneath his boots. "No," he said, "it remembers." The boy frowned. "Remembers what?" Caleb paused. "The ones who tried to leave their sins buried instead of faced." The wind moved through the grass, the house stayed silent, and far beneath the floorboards, far deeper than bones or blood, something settled back into sleep. Because the land didn't need ghosts anymore. It had a keeper, and if you've made it this far, you already know, some doors aren't meant to be locked forever. Subscribe and like this video.